If you got a chance, can I talk to you later?
We'll see, Jerome.
If you can.
You bet. Okay. Welcome everybody. It is Monday, April the 11th, where we're sitting. Might be April the 12th where you are. And this is the Open-Hearted Practice Group with Jory and Jim. And hmm, I'm feeling really happy in the moment seeing all of you and seeing new faces and faces that are also familiar, and also some faces that aren't seen yet. They're just names on the screen, but I know you're here. And I'm also feeling tender because of what's been going on in the world. I have a lot of friends in China, in Shanghai specifically, and Shanghai is really suffering right now because of COVID and the restrictions that people are living under because of how the Chinese government is trying to control the virus. And I'm really sad about that and tender. And also, we have a bunch of trainers in Ukraine and Russia, about 5 or 6 trainers, and I worry about them a lot. So it's real mixed feelings for me. How are you, Jory?
In this moment, I'm making a response to an email, and having finished that, I feel relieved and I'm wanting to put my attention now on being part of this group. And I feel appreciative that you're all here and that we're working together to create the world that I hope we want to live in, where everybody's needs matter. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, Jory. And I put a little chat message for you to keep track of when you're making notes.
Yeah, and
If
we
you're-
can actually, I invite people at this point, if you have any requests at all about the breakout groups, this is a good time to put that in the chat. That supports me in catching what you're saying. If you start to put it in too late and I'm already doing the groups, it gets lost in the chat. So thank you.
Okay, so if you're here for the first time, let me just give you a little orientation of what we're going to do. We are going to start in just a moment with a self-connection exercise, which is just an opportunity to kind of get grounded and practice NVC as a self-empathy tool. Then we'll put you into small groups if you want to be in a small group, to just check in with each other, and give you more instructions about how you can check in when it's time for that group. Then our lesson today is called Cultivating Vitality, which is basically how to use nonviolent communication to support your own well-being and to create the energy to do the work of nonviolence that we'd like to see happening in the world, the work of peacemaking. And so today we'll have about 3 or 4 small groups where we'll give you a prompt to talk about in terms of how some strategies for cultivating vitality. And at the end, there'll be some time to check out as a large group. We'll hear from a few people, and then we'll give you some resources and things, some homework that you could consider doing as well. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started with a self-connection exercise, unless there's something else that anybody else needs to say first.
Well, the only thing I'd like to say is for those of you who have joined since we started, to make sure if you have any requests about language requests around the breakout group, please put them right now next to your name.
Okay. So let's just do a quick self-connection exercise to maximize our time together in small groups and practice today. And let's just do the orientation exercise, the practice of presence and observing. So just look around the space that you're in and let your eyes go wherever they would like to go. And invite your head to just accompany your eyes wherever your eyes would like to go. You can even look underneath your desk or table or behind you, wherever your eyes want to go. And as you do that, just notice your body, how your body might be responding to this simple exercise. You might notice sensations arising or something about your breathing. You don't have to try to change anything. You just notice what's actually happening. And then let your eyes come to rest on something that you enjoy looking at. And then connect with that object or person or whatever. And just savor that experience of enjoyment. And if you are willing and comfortable doing it, you could close your eyes and listen. And as you listen, you might be aware of not only the sounds in your environment, including my voice, you might also be aware of your own thinking. Like you can listen in to your own internal conversation. That's not true, of course, for everybody. Some people have an internal conversation and some people maybe don't. But if you do, then just listen with a sense of empathy to those thoughts. In other words, just be open, receptive, warm, and listen not only for the content of the thought, but what are the feelings and the needs that you notice underneath the thought. And if you have the thought, I wonder what he's talking about, then you just notice that and connect with that thought. And then shift your attention again to notice your body, especially any sensations that are present in your body. Maybe there's something that's pleasant, maybe there's something that's painful, maybe a neutral sensation. Maybe the sensations keep changing. Even if it's the only sensation that you notice is the sensation of breathing, that's fine. You may also be aware of emotions. If you are, just notice the emotion as it arises in your consciousness. If you have a name for it, you can name the emotion. If you don't, it's okay. Just notice it and allow it. And if you have a name for it, you can notice it, name it, and allow it, and then see what happens. Then consider what needs brought you here today. What are you hoping for, in other words? If that question doesn't make any sense to you, that's okay. I'll make some guesses. Maybe you're here for learning. Maybe you're here for community, personal growth, connection, contribution, fun, something else. One way you might get connected to the needs is to ask yourself, what's the best thing that could happen when I'm here today? And finally, for this exercise, you could just consider, what could I do about it? If this is my need, this is what I'm hoping for, what could I do to contribute to getting my own needs met today? If your eyes have been closed, you can let them open whenever you're ready, and then look around again. Get oriented to your environment again. Make sure you're still in a safe place. While we've been practicing, Jory's been making small groups for us, groups of 3, and she probably set the timer for about 10 minutes. And what you can do in the small group is introduce yourself to maybe some people that you've seen before. Maybe it'll be brand new people. Maybe say your name, where you're from, how you're feeling. How you're feeling about being in this class, doing this exercise, doing the check-in. And answer the question, why are you here? What brought you? There's 10 million things you could be doing right now. And for some reason, you decided to come here. How come? Just share that with your new friends. And anything else you need to say just to arrive. And then switch, let somebody else go. So while you're talking, you'll be practicing honesty. We invite you to be just as exactly as honest as you're willing to be, and no more. And when you're listening, you're practicing empathy. And in this case, silent empathy. You're just going to be listening without any response or questions or anything like that. You're just going to listen, see what you can learn by just being present with another human being as they speak. And when it's your turn to shift from empathy to honesty, then you can talk about what's alive in you, what's your name, what you're feeling, why you're here, and so forth. Everybody should have about 3 minutes to talk. If you don't have 3 minutes worth of stuff to say, then you can finish whenever you like and pass the baton on to the next person. But do have care for one another. Make sure everybody has some chance to speak if they would like to. And with that, Jory, whenever you're ready, you can open up the groups.
Yeah, and I would suggest in each group there be a timekeeper. so that when we're talking, we can get that support of when we're actually pushing the edge of our time so that everybody has a chance. I'm going to open up the groups. And again, if you've come in late, just give me a moment and I'll get you in groups. If there's anything about the group that's not working for you, a language or whatever, feel free to come back to the main room and we can reorganize as well. And with that, go forth and connect.
As people come back. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. We had our own little small group here, and I would like to hear. I'd like to hear from anybody who has anything you'd like to say to the large group before we dive into the rest of our class.
In particular, about anything about what we did last week or what just happened in your group.
Now, go ahead, Gail.
Well, two things, but I'll just talk about one of them. I would like us to welcome a brand new person to the group, if she doesn't mind. Her name is Mita. She was in our group.
Welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Welcome, Mita.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
And you said there were two things, Gail. You want to say the other one?
Well, I see the other person there. She'll speak for herself, Deborah.
Okay.
Great.
No, I thought you said you had two things you were going to say and you were only going to say one. And I was hungry to find out what the other one was.
I bet you Deborah's going to say it. So I'll let Deborah say it.
Okay, go ahead, Deborah.
Hi, thank you for asking about last week. That was a very powerful week for me. And Jory, you said something that I really hadn't heard before, which is being internally referenced. And it really there's one area in my life that I have learned to be that, but most of my life, including my personal life, I really haven't. And having that word and thinking about what that meant has been a wealth, a fountain of knowledge, I think, or opening, or, looking at something differently, like, oh, what a beautiful contribution to my life. So for that, I am very grateful. And I think it might take me a long time to learn to be internally referenced.
I'm celebrating that that's an awareness that you have right now and that it's serving you. Yay.
Yay, thank you.
Yeah. And welcome to all of you who might be here for the first time. I'm really glad that you're here. And anybody else would like to check in right now before we move into the lesson? Two ways you can connect, by the way. Maureen says, what's the word again? I think it was internally referenced. There you go.
Yes.
Some other people are adding the notes. Thanks, Janet and Rena, for being our memory. Okay, then. Oh, I was going to say two ways that you can connect here with the large group. One way is through the chat. People are on the chat now. I can't always keep track of it, but sometimes I can. And there are people in the chat asking a question, which we'll get to in just a second. But the other way is to raise your hand. If you don't know how to raise your hand, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a whole bunch of little buttons. And one of them says reactions. And if you click on that little button, then there's a place there that you can raise your hand. Jory, do you want to say what you mean when you use the phrase internally referenced?
It's self-aware, and particularly aware of what is going on inside of you, to hear your own voice and to connect to your feelings and be more anchored into what really matters to you.
Yeah. And I think today's lesson will actually enhance those skills, Deborah. So I'd love to check in toward the end and see if you get some support in that. So I'm going to go ahead and launch into the lesson here. We're right on time. Today's lesson's called Cultivating Vitality, which is defined on our matrix as tuning into oneself to support balanced self-care, cultivating the energy to serve life. So there it is. There's that internal reference right off the bat, tuning into oneself. And why? So that we can balance our self-care. Many of us have been educated to put our needs on the back burner and just support other people in getting their needs met. And that can lead to all kinds of problems, health-wise and emotionally, including things like resentment. And so today we were going to be working on some strategies to support that quality of balanced self-care. Those of you who have been here before will see some familiarity with this little chart. We put a chart like this up every week. And this just talks about a pathway that we can take from wherever you are to a place of more integration with the skill that we named Cultivating Vitality. So I'll just be quiet for a minute or so while you look at that. I realize that we have at least one person on the call who is on the phone, so I'll just say a little bit about the pathway. Basically, we often begin this pathway kind of stuck in a bunch of unconscious habitual patterns that we picked up from the way we've been educated, and maybe even leftovers from our biology. And then we become aware that there's something we can pay attention to, feelings, as like a big clue about our energy levels from moment to moment. And then we get some insight as we keep going down this pathway about what influences our energy levels. And we can make more choices that can help us to become more resourceful. But why would we want to do that? So that we can make life wonderful, as Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of nonviolent communication, would say, that by connecting to needs, and specifically connecting to needs as resources, we can figure out ways that we can contribute to making life more wonderful for ourselves and others. And in those moments of integration that we all experience, every single person has experienced all of these skills at the integrated level at various moments in your life. But we have that feeling of energy, where we're enjoying compassionate giving and receiving, which is the whole purpose of nonviolent communication. So we'll keep going with the lesson, and let's talk about just this idea of vitality. It's about becoming alive. It's the vital force. It's Marshall called it the beloved divine energy that's flowing through us. That's what makes us alive. And human beings have needs, but as far as we know, rocks don't have needs. And so it's what makes a living being is having needs and moving towards getting those needs met. And we're going to take some ideas today and apply them to nonviolent communication. These ideas were inspired by a guy named Martin Seligman, who wrote a book called Flourish. He's done some other work. He's considered the father of positive psychology, the former president of the American Psychological Association. And he developed something called the PERMA model. Well, I noticed that if we just change the letters just a little bit from PERMA to remap, I kind of liked it better, because I want to build a new map in my experience that'll help me to connect more fully with life in order to engage with more compassionate giving and receiving. So remap is an abbreviation for 5 other concepts, and we're going to give you a taste today of each of these 5 concepts. So the first one, and according to Dr. Seligman's research, the most important part of the remap model is relationships. That's why I wanted it to be the first thing rather than the third thing in his list. And so relationships is it's literally vital. Human beings are, by our nature, we are connected creatures. We cannot live by ourselves. So we will die. And there's plenty of research to back this up. We know the problems with things like orphanages where children are not given the quality of connection that they need and how that can affect them. We know the problems with things like solitary confinement and so forth. So we know that without relationship, we will die or be hurt badly. The E stands for engagement, and I'll explain a little bit more about what that means as we go. M stands for meaning. A is accomplishment. And P is positivity, or the experience of life-affirming emotions. So we're going to dive in and have a taste of each of these elements of the remap. The first one is relationships. As I already mentioned, human life is relational. Every moment is an opportunity to build or break connection. And for human beings, we are so wired for connection that we find it a pleasure. And we have lots of different strategies for creating connection, everything from a Zoom call like this to a massive sporting event with 50 or 100,000 people in it, to small gatherings, to large gatherings. You can just think of all the tons of different strategies that you've used in your life to enjoy human connection. In fact, one of the cool things about nonviolent communication is that you can even enjoy conflict. You can learn to enjoy conflict and see that conflict can be an opportunity to release energy and to learn something new. So the first practice about relationship is to choose one significant relationship that you have in your life. Just name and maybe write it down as the observation on your piece of paper or however you're taking notes or just in your mind. Choose one person that you would label as a significant relationship because it relates to supporting your well-being. Name who the person is and start thinking about why. Why did you choose that person as significant to your well-being? And Jory is going to reset the timer on the small groups for 8 minutes. Everybody will have about 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes to talk about this relationship and why it's important to you. The idea as you express is to notice how talking about the relationship, how just even talking about and connecting to the idea of the relationship, how does that affect your energy? And then when you're listening to someone, again, we're going to encourage you to practice silent empathy, but to become aware about how, as the person speaks, what you notice about their energy as they talk about a significant relationship related to well-being. And then we'll see you all back here in about 8 minutes.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Whee!
As you come back, notice how you feel after being in the flow of that particular exercise, connecting to a relationship that contributes to your well-being. just take a moment and notice what your body is like right now. There might also be some irritation. You might have been right in the middle of your sentence when Zoom decided to whisk you back here. So whatever your experience is, just notice it, name it, and allow it. And we're a little ahead of schedule. So if anybody would like to share anything about what you're noticing right now, especially if you haven't spoken yet, about this first critical component of cultivating well-being, relationship. If you'd like to say something, put it into the chat or raise your hand. Love to hear from one or two people. And that would support my connection, my well-being.
Ellen?
Oops, go ahead. Oops, Ellen's can't hear
Run
you.
away.
Ellen. You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so one thing I mentioned that I think is really important to relationships that I have in the person that I mentioned in a breakout room was that when we had a disagreement or he got really passionate about how I was doing something or how it could be different in a good way, is that it would rupture the relationship and I would want to run away, but we would always repair. And that was his big thing. Relationships are all about rupture and repair if it's done properly. And I am learning with him because he's a clinician. And so it has made it a very, I can see where I don't have to run away from every relationship that I'm in. That if it's safe, the person is well-intentioned, the relationship can usually be repaired. And that was really important to me. It's been important to me as a lesson. Thanks.
Thanks, Ellen. And that again, you're pointing out this very important, and this is how NVC can really support us in building relationships that can contribute to well-being. In that when we do have the inevitable conflict seems to be inevitable in relationship. And when they come up, we can do the repair work. And that can actually release energy. That can actually give us more energy than we had before. Sanjita, would you like to go next?
Thank you so much, everybody. So I realized after the session how joyful I was in sharing my experience with my ex-husband, where after the NVC journey, I have taken that from animosity to good friendship between us. He has become my major support system. And also that I used to tend to think myself to be much of a giver and used to feel sour and bitter about it not getting reciprocated in terms of nobody. I thought that was, they only took from me and they never gave back. But after sharing, we all realized is that it feels good to be that in that space, in that expanded space of being able to give love, compassion, to serve on people, and to accept everybody just the way they are in the journey of life. So that's where I am.
Nice. Thank you.
I'm so touched hearing that, just taking it in that even when relationships can change form, even when they change form, which all relationships inevitably will change form, that even that can be an opportunity for growth and enhanced well-being. So thank you for modeling that for us, Sanjita. And then Rena.
Yeah. So I was talking about my relationship with my sister, because we are, with this particular sister, our well-being is as if in tandem, and our lives are very different, vis-a-vis hers with constant struggles and mine with constant breakthroughs at the same time. This being witnessing each other's lives and the flow of giving and receiving uh, helps me to dive deeper into what's not working for me. So really, and for her to what's working for her. So there is that kind of support when we share our pains, they reduce, and when we share our joys, they multiply. I'd heard that, and now I live it with her. And what helps is, to say, yes, I'm needy. Earlier, my God, it used to be, like a nightmare to be seen. Why are you so needy? And both of us like say, yes, I'm needy. I want to be heard, and I can wait. So really bringing that needs awareness and dignity to each other's lives. And as I say this, I'm just feeling so full. I can grieve and have gratitude at the same time.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's beautiful.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you pointing out the judgments we have with a word like needy. I think it's such an important piece to realize that so often we've heard that's a bad thing. And the reality is, the more we're connected to the needs and the more intense that feeling is, the more important it is to pay attention rather than gifts. Thank you.
Thanks, Rena, and thanks also for sharing the the avian concert in the background, the bird concert in the background. So lovely to hear the morning birds in Dharamsala. Thank you. So let's go on to the E in Remap, which is engagement. And the primary researcher in this particular part of the Remap model was a guy named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And I'm so glad that Wikipedia taught me how to say his name, because he's Hungarian, and my poor English brain cannot wrap itself around even how it's spelled. So thank you to Wikipedia, and thank you to Mihai Csikszentmihalyi for doing this critical work more than 40 years ago now. Mihai just died maybe last year or the year before, and he left a true mark on the field of positive psychology. His work was in what has come to be known as flow states. So when we are fully engaged in something that we really enjoy doing, the effect of that engagement is flow. And flow is a remarkable experience. Every human being has had the experience of flow. It's not some kind of a far off state that you have to try to achieve. You don't really even trying to work towards flow actually gets in the way of flow. Flow, like I said, is the effect of engaging. And the way that you engage is by finding something that you have passion about, something that you're really interested in, and then fully immersing yourself in it. It could be social change work. It could be politics. It could be being a medical doctor. It could be being a gardener. It could be 10,000 things. It could actually be 8 billion different things. In fact, take 8 billion people on the planet and multiply it by all the interests that are possible for human beings to have, and enjoy one of those in a fully engaged way, and you'll experience flow. And one of the cool things about flow is that when you are in a flow state, separateness or the feeling of separation disappears. You have it's like a temporary dissolving of all enemy images, all things that we would call ego. They all disappear in that moment of flow. You're so completely present that nothing else exists other than you and what you are enjoying. So I see your hand, Stephen. We'll connect if it works for you after we come back from this group. So here, the idea is that you write down 3 things that you enjoy doing. So that's the observation for this part. Write down 3 things that you enjoy doing. And then we're going to go back to small groups again. And this time we'll continue to practice just like we did last time with one particular person who's sharing something that really engages you, something that you really enjoy doing, something where you can sometimes have the experience of flow. Could be a sporting thing, could be a work thing, doesn't really matter. Any kind of, like, I'm kind of in it right now, to tell you the truth. I'm in a bit of a flow state right now. Share what it is that you do, and then the other people listen. And then when you're done, say, I'm done. And then the next person after you will make one guess about what need of yours is satisfied when you're doing that activity. So, for example, if I'm sharing about gardening and I talk a little bit about gardening and how fun it is when I notice that I'm actually harvesting some fruits or vegetables, and then I finish and somebody says, "Oh, sounds like it's fun for you to garden," and then I just take that in. So that's the idea here: is you express something that helps you to get into a state of flow, something that you really engage in. And then other people in your group will make a single needs word guess about what need of yours is met. And again, we'll do this for about 8 minutes. So about 2.5 minutes for each person. And so please try to make sure that everybody has a chance to express. And whenever you're ready, Jory. Okay. Welcome back. Siva, is there still something that you wanted to say? Siva, did you still have?
I have a question,
Sure.
and it's the question that I'm pretty sure has a very long answer.
You've come to the right place.
My problem is that there's an individual in my life, and when I talk to him and I ask him what he thinks or how he feels, he doesn't have anything to say, and he doesn't say anything.
Yeah. And I guess that's frustrating for you because you're longing to connect. Yeah.
Any suggestions from anybody?
Yeah. Yeah, well, first, just to catch that it's frustrating when you're longing to connect with somebody and what you're getting back is silence or I don't know. Any of you who have been parents and have had teenagers lived with this person probably in your life. I certainly had teenagers that went through periods of time when they didn't feel anything and they didn't want to talk about anything. And the only thing that Jory and I could figure out to do in that moment was just to love them just the way they were, just to walk with them and to accept their silence. And
Do you think it could be because as children, I know as when I was a child, we didn't in school, in my family, we didn't learn feeling words.
sure,
Right.
If you ask me today, what does love mean? I don't know.
yeah,
There's 6 flavors of love according to the Greeks,
Yeah.
yeah,
but I,
Well,
I'm not in. Don't have a background, and this person I'm talking about, we didn't have a we didn't. It's like not knowing what red is because nobody said, "See this one? It's red."
right.
Right. Yeah, so you actually know that part inside yourself as well of not responding, not knowing what to say, being silent in those difficult times. Yeah.
Okay, I'm getting recognition, but I'm not getting any answers.
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge that and just to try and create some empathy, perhaps, around this person who's not speaking up to you either, who's doing exactly what it was like for you as a child when you didn't know how to speak up.
Yeah,
That's why I
Well, how
thought
many years can you do that, Jory?
to live with someone who doesn't speak up.
Mhm.
That's a very subjective thing. There are some people who live very happily with people who don't speak up, that's how it works. That's what they signed up for. And I would suggest perhaps that if someone you live with, that's more challenging, but if it's not, then you choose elsewhere to get the connection. And actually, as I even say that, if it's someone you live with, get your needs met elsewhere, if at all possible, and build the other links of connection.
yeah. In the quick NVC answer, it's really not a long answer. It's actually a kind of in the back pocket for all NVC trainers. That anytime you have these what if questions, what do you do if questions? We always have 3 choices with nonviolent communication: self-connection, empathy, or honesty. So you might just do some journaling about what your honesty might sound like in that situation, and making sure that your honesty ends with a clear and present request. Then you may do some journaling about what empathy would look like. Make empathy guesses about what's behind that silence. Are they scared? Are they not connected to their feelings? Do they just not have a vocabulary for it? And so forth. Just make some empathy guesses. But probably most importantly, for cultivating vitality, is to do the self-care, like Jory was just pointing to, that to accompany yourself in a way that you long to be accompanied, to be with yourself in your frustration, your loneliness, your hurt, whatever the feelings are that are alive in you, and connect them to your needs and mourn. Just to mourn that sometimes needs are not met in the way that we would like.
Can you remind me more about the honesty part?
Yeah, so the honesty part might be something like, let's just say that Jory's in a mood where she doesn't really want to talk to me for whatever reason, probably because of something that I did. And so, I approach her and I say, I'm feeling really scared. I'd like to hear what's going on in you. When you don't tell me what's going on, I notice I get more scared. How do you feel when you hear me say that? I don't know, or silence. So when I get your silence, I feel frustration and I just have this longing to connect. By now, if it's me and Jory, I'm crying. I'm just so brokenhearted, longing for connection that I'm crying. And then maybe something happens, maybe it doesn't, but I'm at least expressing the life in me and being open to outcome. I need to make it okay that in those when another human being, including myself, is in the mood not to speak, that might be this the way it is, and I can just accept that and mourn it. So that's my only real advice.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think it's really good advice. I can I hope I can remember it and use it.
Well, practice, practice, practice. All right, thanks, Siva. So I see two other hands up, and I'm wondering if either or both of you could hold it, so we get time for all the practices today, and then I'll make sure that I get to you the next time we do a little check-in here in just a couple minutes, because I want to make sure. Thank you. So the next piece in the remap is meaning, the letter M, and so. Meaning has to do with our vision and our mission, and an alignment between what we do in the world and who we are as human beings. So there's this linkage. For me, vision has to do with the world as I would like it to be. It's my dream of the world. What's the best possible, what's utopia? From my point of view, what's the best thing that could happen? That's my vision. And then my mission is the part that I play in trying to make that vision come true. So, for example, in my case, my vision is a world where everyone's needs are met reliably and abundantly. And it's great to have a vision statement like that that's only about 10 words long, because then you can pull it out when you really need it. So my vision is to create a world where everyone's needs, including plants and animals and the earth itself, everything's needs can be met reliably and abundantly. And my mission is to share nonviolent communication with people who are interested in hearing it, because I'm sensing that that's in alignment with my vision, that it'll actually help my vision to come true. My vision might not come true for 500 or 1,000 or 10,000 years. I don't know, but I can do a little bit about it right now. And when I do that work, like this practice group, for example, it gives meaning to my life. I have the fun of contribution. So the next practice is to just think about, what's your vision? What's your vision of the world that you would like to see? If we had more time, we'd actually spend about 15 minutes kind of going through a little meditation to help you get connected to your vision. But we're going to give you the chance to practice your authenticity on the fly. You might not know, so that might be the first thing out of your mouth when it's your turn to speak next time is, I have no idea what my vision is. And maybe someone would say to you, oh, so you're not quite sure yet. So someone might just acknowledge your experience. And they say, yeah, well, now that you say that, I would like to have, I kind of like what Jim said, or I like Star Trek, or, I'd like to live in a world like Star Trek where they don't have money anymore, or whatever your dream is. Just talk about your dream for about 2 minutes. So that won't be very much time to get to develop it very fully, but it'll start to plant a seed. So that's the idea here. We'll go back to groups and share about vision, your vision of what the world is that you'd like to see, the world of your hopes and dreams. And then the listeners acknowledge what they hear very briefly. You don't have to repeat back everything the person said, but just see if you can catch the essence of the
In
person's.
like 5 words, if you can really chunk it down to the fewest words.
In 1 word, yeah, 5 or less. That's a great goal.
Yeah.
So again,
Okay,
we only have about 2.5 minutes per person to talk about vision. See you in a few minutes.
okay.
And as you come back, again, take a moment, take a breath to transition. Notice how your body is in this moment. And I'm a little behind schedule here. I want to make sure you get maximum practice. So gonna do the next practice. Practice, 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 Marshall said. So the next practice has to do with the A, which is accomplishment. So every time that we come from our being and then end up doing something to contribute to making life more wonderful, and we have a sense of completion or even progress, we can stop, savor, and celebrate. Savoring means to extend the enjoyment of something. Usually it's associated with food. You savor a piece of chocolate or a sip of a delicious lassi or whatever it is that you like. So it's just opening up your experience of presence to enjoy, to fully enjoy something. And celebration is to acknowledge that you're doing it, to actually name and notice that a need has been met. And in this case, no matter, it's probably the need for contribution. And when you have the sense that you have contributed, you can pause for a moment and take it in. So think of something you've done over the last month or so where you have it linked in your mind to an accomplishment. It can be a big thing or it could be a small thing. It can be as small as making a phone call to somebody that you have been intending to call for a while. It could be something like, I don't know, every week I actually have the joy of taking the garbage out to the street, which is about a 1/4 of a mile hike with a garbage can. And when I get to the top of the hill, it's like, wow, I did it. So it can be that minor, or maybe you finished a chapter of a book that you're writing. I don't know what it is, but write down something that you've accomplished. And then
Yeah,
we're
can
gonna,
you did the dishes.
yeah, could be doing the dishes. And then we're going to put you back in the group again for 8 minutes to savor and celebrate with other human beings. And here, what the listeners are doing is they're affirming. They're celebrating with you. They might be like nodding their head or saying, you know, that's great, or wow, that must feel good. It could be you can empathize with joy just as much as you can empathize with pain. So this is your chance to accompany somebody in their accomplishment. And again, we'll do it for about 8 minutes. Everybody has about 3 minutes. And here we go.
What a gift to be able to celebrate with people. Okay, we'll open it up.
Everything happens for a reason. And so maybe it was meant to be that I could connect with you all on a personal level.
And we welcome everybody back.
And believe it or not, we have one more practice to squeeze in. So we get the whole remap. Then we'll get a chance to hear from a few people. And we'll stick around on the call at the very end to answer any questions and so forth. So let's just do this last practice because it's going to tie the whole thing together in NVC terms, I hope, for you. So first, let me go back one slide. The P stands for positive emotion. Those of you who were here a few weeks ago, we went, I think, through the whole list of 10 positive emotions. The one that we most study in nonviolent communication is gratitude, and we'll have an experience of that in just a moment. But basically, positive emotion it's just the pleasant feelings that naturally arise when needs have been satisfied. I like to call them life-affirming emotions. But Dr. Seligman calls them positive emotions, and most positive psychologists seem to like that term. But it's just the pleasant feelings that we naturally have when needs have become satisfied. So when you eat a meal, you feel full. You can even notice it with the next breath. You know, especially if you hold your breath for just a second and then take a breath and really enjoy it, that feeling of fullness that you get, that's a positive emotion or a life-affirming emotion. So think of something that happened today during today's group. Maybe it's something that happened in a small group. Maybe it's something that, an insight that you had. Maybe it's something that you heard from Jory or me. But write down a gift that you have received during today's group. Just a one sentence observation.
It could be in the small group or the large group.
Now I'm going too fast for some of you and not fast enough for others. So just naming that. What need of yours was or is satisfied when you received this gift? Then as you connect to the need, become present to the feeling of satisfaction. What flavor of satisfaction do you feel? Is it gratitude, appreciation, love, peace, joy, inspiration, hope, presence? And allow
Sit with
yourself,
it.
stay with the feeling. That's where the
Yeah.
juice comes from, is to savor that feeling.
And we'll be quiet for just a minute for you to connect. The belonging, life force.
And finally, consider, what did you do that helped make it happen? At the very least, you showed up at the group. So you did something. Maybe you can think of something else that you did. I love that people are putting some of these things into the chat. It's a wonderful way to express your gratitude. Also,
The empathy and honesty, honest self-expression.
and
Shared
now,
vision.
if anybody would like to share it out loud, we have a few minutes set aside to hear some of these gratitudes. Something to me especially wants to hear from people who might be here for the first time today, or maybe it's been a while since you've been here, but I'm really glad to hear from anybody, especially Deborah, because that's where we started the class, is connecting with Deborah. So Deborah, let's hear it. What you got?
Well, I feel so grateful to my breakout room partners, Dawn and Frankie. And especially in this last breakout session, I had so many needs met. I felt like I had the opportunity to express myself and be heard and be celebrated and encouraged. It met my needs for joy and aliveness, being heard. And I felt so welcomed by them, just very welcomed by Dawn and Frankie. And, they encouraged my expression. And I guess what I did to make it happen was I shared openly and honestly. And I feel inside such a sense of expansion and love and connection that I am so deeply grateful every week to this group. And I just is so precious to me.
Thank you for sharing that. And thank you, Frankie and Don, for walking with Deborah in that. Beautiful. Thank you. And Rob?
Yeah, in the breakout group, I just got in touch with more how my daughter living with me has actually been such a joy, and it's the need of contributing to have meaning in my life, because she's had some real problems living down in LA, and now she's stabilized and feels more solid and vital. And what did I do to make it happen? I just, at first I didn't want her to live here. So it was like, letting a lot of barriers down and opening up and willing to spend a lot of time, not to go on vacations and stuff like that, to stay at home and be with my daughter and enjoy life with her. So it gives my life meaning.
Sweet.
Beautiful. Thank you. And Hanya?
I want to express my gratitude to Jim for having me win my bet, because the very first thing I said, I bet Jim is going to say next, how did you contribute to that happening? And you finally said it.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Glad to contribute. I'll take my cut later. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mika.
So I'd like to thank Reena for introducing me to all of you. It's my very first session, and though I missed a couple of minutes, I was a little late joining in. Gail, Deborah, Monica, and Fumiko, they've been my buddies in the breakout rooms, and they've really helped me. And I think there was a very, very big thing that I was looking for, which was acceptance. And they pinpointed those words for me when and I think I was able to share very, very freely. And that was a connect, and we built a very strong connection. And I found that we all were on the same plane, talking about the same thing in all different ways. So that was really, really beautiful. And thank you, Jim and Corey, for having me. It's been a wonderful journey so far. So yeah, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I'm glad you're here. I want to read what Minako wrote in the chat. For those of you who haven't met Minako, she had to take a couple weeks off, but now she's back. Really glad that Minako is with us. Minako writes because she is still learning English. And so I'm always touched when she takes the energy to come here and learn with us. But she wrote, when we connect to a vision, it is a reciprocal exchange of the flow of life. There is a longing for a world clothed in the quality of I that simply breathes and is emitted from within. There is a longing to just feel life itself. Thank you. And Siva, and then we'll do our end of class commercial, and then we'll stick around and answer any other questions or hear from anybody else. Go ahead, Siva.
Well, I'm grateful for the people in my group, but I'm especially grateful for this invitation that came yesterday from you guys. And I wrote to you. It seems like it's a mirror of my life, how I collect stuff and I collect stuff and I collect stuff, and then everything is there, but I can't find it because it's buried in a mess of stuff. And that's how I felt about the new invitation that came today. It was like somebody, I thought it was Jory, but Jim, you're the one who responded that everything was like in its place and so easy to click it here or click it there. And it was like, wow. It
Beautiful.
reminded me of what you said last week, how you moved from California to Hawaii and you had this, you could hardly wait for people to take stuff except your cartons and cartons of books.
You got it. Thank you for the acknowledgement. It was a joy to
Yeah.
spend some time learning how to create that. So I had fun doing it.
Well, I'm thrilled you did that.
All righty. Thank you so
So
much.
here comes the little commercial stuff. If you're not on our mail list and you would like to be, so you get that really cool email that I sent out this week, you'll get one next week. You can click on that link and you can sign up for the email there. If you like to listen to recordings of classes, you can do that by following that link. Right now, there are probably about 35 or maybe even actually there's more than 50 recordings that are available on our website from the last year or so. Not even, that's just a half a year. We've been busy. And then I wrote a book. I didn't buy a book. I wrote a book and you can buy it, and it's a fundraiser for the Center for Nonviolent Communication. The Center for Nonviolent Communication, which was started by Marshall Rosenberg. And that particular link takes you to internationalshopping.com, which gives a link of all kinds of places that you can order the book and get free shipping internationally. So hopefully one of those will work for you. My preference is that you order it at your local bookstore and that lots of people do that. I heard in Santa Barbara, so many people went in and ordered the local bookstore that they were quite surprised, and they decided to start stocking the book, which is really cool. That's what I want to happen. And finally, we do all of our practice groups in the spirit of compassionate giving and receiving, inspired by Marshall's vision of a world where everybody's needs can be met reliably and abundantly through compassionate giving. And you can donate to the Center for Nonviolent Communication with that first link there. That's the group that Marshall Rosenberg started back in the 80s. And that supports about 700 certified trainers around the world. And the second link is if you don't want to donate to CNVC, you'd rather give us the money and we'll pay it forward to an NVC project, then you can use that link. It'll take you to PayPal eventually. And you can send us your money to PayPal. Because of your generosity, we've been able to fund several really cool NVC projects this year, including the very first help to do the very first Spanish-only virtual intensive training. So it's because of your generosity that things like that happen. Next week, we will continue our studies of the Pathways to Liberation, Matrix of Self-Acceptance. And I'll tell you what the class is in just a minute. Jory, would you like to just check out first?
I was just reading the notes over here of the chat. And I'm just appreciating the sense of partnership here, that we're all here with a shared intention to learn together how we can make life more wonderful. So thank you for the partnership. And thank you for any requests that you make. They're actually that you make in terms of the groups when I'm making them or whatever. I see that as a gift, an opportunity to contribute. So thank you.
Yes. Next week, we will talk about sharing power. We'll talk about moving from a paradigm of power over or a domination hierarchy into a power with or a partnership hierarchy. So we will talk about that and get some practices in doing that with one another. For me, it's the antidote for what's going on in Europe right now and 25 other conflict zones, because war is the most brutal expression of power over. And we human beings, we should know better by now. And so next week we'll practice sharing, learning how to share power and learning how to do it in our own lives first, so that it ripples out, and eventually we can create a world where everybody's needs can be reliably and abundantly satisfied. So with that, I close the call. And if there's any remaining questions or comments, you can ask them now. And you can also stick around and do the after party. Jory makes small groups for people to hang out for as long as you would like with another small group and talk about whatever's alive in you. More practice.
So I'll open up the groups, and if you find yourself alone in a group, just give me a moment and I'll do my
I
best.
see one question first, Jory. I see one question. So before you do
Okay.
that, go ahead, Ellen.
It was just a comment I had before you had to quickly go into the last part. When I was growing up, we weren't allowed to be, had to be seen but not heard.
Yes.
So when I moved to Washington in my 20s, the only thing I could say was I'm uncomfortable. And it was not until I was almost 63 in the Puget Sound area, and I hooked up with this clinician who does NBC, did my therapy of many years even come together. And so I just feel like the vocabulary that we learn in this and the process that we learn even in this group itself, and I'm sure there's more out there, is just so invaluable. I'm very grateful that I fell into it, because I'd still be there mushing along and not making any progress. I've made incremental progresses. It doesn't feel like that to me. It feels very hard right now, but I guess I'm still on the planet, and I just want to thank everybody here for allowing me to be honest and just let my guard down for a little bit. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellen. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you for sharing that. I share the experience of that.